Hey there, how you doing? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. I am super freaking excited to make this video and show this thing to you. It's probably the retro emulation thing that I've been looking forward to the most, specifically because it's so nostalgic for the little GBA lover that lives inside my heart. Him and the parasite that I try really hard to forget about. I've said this many times, but the Game Boy Advance is my favorite retro system to emulate. The games developed for the GBA have that pixely retro vibe, but because it's a later retro system, the games themselves are designed with a more modern game design sensibility. And the icing on the spaghetti is that the GBA itself was an amazing piece of hardware. The first version of the GBA was kinda neat. I know lots of people have nostalgia for that, but I'm a GBA SP kinda dweeb. That's where I jumped on the GBA train. The GBA SP was, in my opinion, the pinnacle of gaming handheld design. With its geometrically proportionate dimensions, the simple industrial aesthetic, a cleverly designed hinge that has stood the test of time, the sheer practicality of a flip device that keeps all the sensitive bits and bobs protected while it's in your pocket but is also super comfortable to actually use to game on. The perfect juncture of aesthetics, pocketability, and comfort. It's all been downhill since then. So why haven't more handheld makers tried to replicate this? Seriously, I'm asking you. It doesn't make any sense. We had the Powkiddy V90. That was a great device and I loved it. It's pretty dated by today's standards, but I played it way longer than it deserved, specifically because of the clamshell form factor. And it's kind of baffling that it's taken this long to get this, the RG35XX SP. A clamshell handheld that tries to do the GBA SP thing and take it one step further to go above and beyond with a ton of great emulation options that make it not only a great handheld for GBA, but a great handheld for all the old retro stuff, including PS1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Nintendo DS, PSP. I have been waiting for this sort of thing literally the entire time that I've been into this hobby. It's the one thing that I've wanted for all these years, and now I have it in my hands. So does it do it? Does it live up to the glory of the GBA SP? Well, let's find out, shall we? But first, before we take another step further, we need to talk about the name, RG35XX SP. These Amberlick names suck, and I'm not gonna stand for it. I've given each of these things a new name. The RG35XX Plus became the Bizzazzle, the 35XXH is the Zazbizzle, the 28XX is the Zazbiddy. So with this well thought out, super consistent, and 100% better naming scheme in mind, I hereby present to you the Flipzizzle. And I need to mention that this Flipzizzle was kindly provided to me to review by LitNXT. They sent me this amazing retro color version, which I am in love with. It looks so good, you guys. LitNXT have good prices, good service, free worldwide shipping, and you should buy this from them if you want one. There's a link in the doodad below. And here's the specs. The short version is that this is the same specs as the entire XX line, or whatever the heck you're supposed to call it. Same processor as the Bizzazzle and the Zazbizzle and the Zazbiddy. The device itself is square. There's a top and a bottom, some sides. The top opens up and inside we have a screen up there, a D-pad down there, face buttons over here, a menu and hotkey button, single front-facing mono speaker, start and select, power indicator over here. On the right we have a power button and a reset button. Underneath we have a headphone hole, a micro SD card hole for the system card, and a second micro SD card hole for a optional games card. On the left side we have volume up and down, and up top we have inline bumpers and triggers, and an HDMI hole and a USB-C hole. Around back, we have a trapdoor with a removable battery. The flippy screen is what sets this thing apart from everything else around. It opens up to a little over halfway kind of freely, but then it snaps to about a 150-degree angle, which is the perfect angle for general use. Basically the same as the GBA SP in this regard. Flip devices are only as good as their hinge. As far as I could tell, this is a high-quality hinge, and it's the same style hinge as the GBA SP, so I have hopes that this thing will last a long time. The Flipzizzle comes in 4 different color vibes: transparent blue and black, and silver and retro beige. Of course, I went for the retro beige. That's my jam, as you well know. Actually, I wasn't sure based on the photos if it would actually look good. But when I put my actual eyeballs on this in real life, I was so relieved that it looks as good as it does. I wouldn't change a thing about it. It looks like a real retro piece of tech. I had like a tiny little retro gaming laptop console thing. I've been leaving this open on my desk just because I love glancing down at it. It just makes me happy to see. This is more or less the same size and shape as the GBA SP, but it's a good bit wider and a little bit thicker. Overall, it feels a bit bigger and heavier in your hand. In contrast, the previous flip device, the Poopoo V90, that thing is smaller than the GBA and lighter. The Flipzizzle is not like huge and heavy, but when I first got this in my hand, I was surprised at how much bigger than the SP it felt. That wore off pretty quick, and now I think the size is perfect. Bigger devices are more comfortable to hold, and it's still a good size and weight to keep in your pocket. Speaking of which, let's do the pocket test. Boom! There you go. Flipzizzle in the pocket. Not too big, but not tiny and insubstantial. It's not uncomfortable, it's totally doable, but if you're lugging something around all day, the Zazbiddy takes the win as the ultimate pocket device. That thing is way smaller and lighter. Or you can get both, the Flipzizzle and the Zazbiddy. Carry both around with you and then you can pretend they're in love. I find the Flipzizzle to be super comfortable. It's a bit wider than the Bezazzle and the Miu Mini Plus, and the extra width is enough to make this feel more like almost like a horizontal handheld rather than a vertical one. I played on this for 3 hours straight as I was testing stuff for this video and then recording gameplay footage, and I had no problem doing that, which is not common for me. Usually I get crampy by the end of a long play session. They've got some secret sauce with this one. It's a delight to hold and to play games on. Speaking of which, the controls on this thing are wonderful. I will mention that all the controls are clicky, including the D-pad. Retro Game Corps just dropped a video where he more or less fixed the clickiness, which I might try, but I like clicky controls, and I like these. However, I know lots of people worry about playing these things in quiet environments, like in bed, if your partner is trying to sleep, and in that case, this might be a little too clicky, so maybe don't play this in bed and do other things, if you know what I mean. Yeah, you do. The D-pad and face buttons are both low profile and have very little travel. I almost never have input issues with clicky D-pads, and it's the same here. There are zero issues with directional inputs like diagonals. The bumpers and triggers are inline, which makes me happy, and they're great to use. All the controls are great. When I first tried this, I liked it, and then in the last few days I've been playing with it, and I've come to love it. The screen is the exact same screen that we get on the Zazbizzle and the Bezazzle. 3.5 inches, 640 by 480. Almost all 3.5 inch screen devices use this exact screen, so no surprises here. Good viewing angles, good brightness. Retro games look amazing on screens this size, and the speaker is good. The same speaker as the other things, but that's a good thing because it's a good speaker. I mean, it's not going to blow you away, but it's good. It's plenty loud enough. One interesting thing that kind of surprised me is that I put some Adventure Time on here just to test out the video player, and I've actually been watching a ton of Adventure Time. The shape of the Flipzizzle means that you can place it on a table and angle the screen so that you can see it easily. So more than any other device, this feels like a little TV. I love watching stuff on this. I'm actually going to swap to a bigger SD card just so I can put a ton of my favorite cartoons on here. And there's a music player, so you can use this as like a media player. Also, for your information, there is no static or any idle noise from the headphone jack. Clean headphone audio here. The system on here is the Amberlip system, whatever you call it. It's the same system that's on all these things. The gist is that it's a fine operating system that works and it gives you the options that you need. The games run through RetroArch and you can change the RetroArch options. Good hotkeys for saving your state and stuff. In the apps section, you got the music player and a video player and an ebook reader and a file manager. And there's some more advanced options in there. You can connect to Wi-Fi for retro achievements. You can connect to Bluetooth controllers, and when you plug this into HDMI, you can connect it up to a TV and use it as a home console. Another cool thing about this thing is that it has a system-wide sleep when you close the screen, even while you're gaming. And this is proper sleep. The game stops running and the screen goes off, and when you open it up, you're right back where you left it instantly. It will still drain some battery like this, it's got to keep the game in the memory, but it's still way better than the fake sleep that we usually get on these things. And there are other options for custom operating systems. My favorite of those is Newly, but there's a lot to talk about with that system and some important stuff to go over. I'm planning on doing a whole other video on Newly sometime soon. So go ahead and get subscribed if you don't want to miss that one. When discussing the gaming on this family of devices, the story is always the same, and I don't want to get into it in every single video, so I'll give you the super quick version now. You can play everything up to and including PS1 with zero issues. Sega Saturn sucks, don't bother, but Nintendo 64 and PSP and Dreamcast work pretty good. The hardest to emulate games don't work great, but most do. And in all these systems, you can tap the power button to switch between D-pad and analog stick inputs, so everything should be more or less playable. On Nintendo DS, the power button swaps between D-pad and stylus control. Obviously, without a proper analog stick, these systems aren't ideal, but this is totally worth the trade-off of not having a stick. I wouldn't like this device as much if it had dual sticks. However, I've said it before and I'll say it again here, why not? I'm not interested in playing higher end graphically impressive 3D games on a small screen like this. And I'll dip my toes into some PS1 or Nintendo 64 for bits and ziggles, but my true love and the reason that I play so many retro handhelds is the old stuff. You know, like Atari, Game Boy, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx-16, arcade, even DOS games. This is the stuff that gets my juices flowing, especially on retro toys that feel like real retro things. And there are some nice customizations that Amberlick has done here. For most of the retro systems, they have integer scaling enabled by default, with a scanlines filter applied for that CRT effect, and a nice bezel for the outside of the screen. Game Boy and Game Boy Color have an LCD shader and a bezel that feels pretty authentic. I like the choices that they've made here, and you can change this stuff if you don't like it. But the star of the show, obviously, is Game Boy Advance. And this is really cool what they've done here. So they applied an LCD shader, which looks pretty darn good. It feels really GBA-ish. But they've done the bezel on the bottom of the screen to offset the image and show the Game Boy Advance SP logo. And they even have a subtle drop shadow around the edges to make it look like the screen is like inset, like it is on the GBA SP. How cool is that? You know, it's a simple thing, but it just completes the look so well. I love that it comes like this out of the box. This thing can do a ton of emulation, but Game Boy Advance is really where it's at. My favorite retro system to emulate on the new modern GBA SP that I've been waiting for. This is my dweeby dream come true. One cool thing about these retro handhelds is that they can be kind of like your retro game Swiss Army knife. You know, you can get one device that does tons of stuff, all the old retro systems. And the Flipzizzle does a great job at that, especially because it's so portable and powerful enough to handle a ton of stuff, even some of the higher end stuff. However, I'm a big fan of using these things as dedicated devices for a specific system, because the perfect device for one retro system may not be the perfect for another system. You know, I love my RG505 for PSP. I love my RG353PS for Super Nintendo. I love my RG Arc for Sega Genesis. I love my RGB20SX for Game Boy. And for all intensive purposes, this Flipzizzle is the GBA device that we've been waiting for. And no word of a lie, this thing has overnight become my current favorite retro toy. I need to give it some more time to see how it fares in the long run, and we'll see how custom firmware shakes out in the months to come. But this has potential to be the handheld of the year for me. It's that good. I've been daily driving this thing and it has slotted into my lifestyle so well. I love whipping it out to play with all through the day. And you can definitely expect some more content on the Flipzizzle because there's more that I want to show you. I want to do some more GBA hidden gems videos because I have tons of those left to show you and I haven't done one in a while. I want to explore Newly. There's definitely more to come, so sit tight. And if you want a Flipzizzle of your own or any retro toy, make sure you check out the link to Lit NXT in the doodad below. But that's it. That's all I got for you today. I'm TechDweeb, and remember, if they can't handle your flip, it's time to let them slip. Bye-bye.